That's funny. We got a countdown now. Did you see our countdown on your screen?
I did, yeah,
Started?
I did.
Yeah, nice. Uh, all right, everyone. Welcome. This is episode, I think 13 was right. I started questioning myself after we started, but we're going to roll with 13. If I have to correct it later, we will. But of Nudawn, a Final Fantasy 11 podcast. I'm your host, Sillies, joined by Mr. Rua. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing fine. A little bit frazzled from the early rise and rushing back from the farmers market, but hey, I got goodies.
Yeah, he sent me a picture before we started streaming. I'm like, okay. First of all, I didn't think he was up. So for some reason, I think our time zones keep changing. So I feel like you were always 18 hours ahead of me, and then now it's like, you said it's only 10 a.m. there? 10,
Yeah.
13?
Yeah.
So
10,
now
13.
it's only, 16 hours. So New Zealand does it different. I don't know, but so what do we get from the farmer's market?
Some oyster mushrooms, free range eggs, got some halloumi cheese, some ghost pepper chili sauce, and I got some ginger beer from a farmer friend of mine I know from work.
What was the first thing you said? Oyster mushrooms?
Yeah. I said, man, you just get all sorts at this market. And there wasn't a single Kiwi at any of these stands I went to. Oh, I also got some boudin noir as well, which is a French blood sausage. So there was a Frenchman. The guy who sold me the mushrooms was an American from Corvallis, Oregon.
Okay.
As he told me. The chef I got the sauce from is Irish. So yeah, there's all sorts in this place. New Zealand's like this.
People.
Yeah, New Zealand's like this little congregating pot at the arse end of the world. But you just encounter all manner of weird and wonderful people here. That's why I'm here. Certainly weird.
Yeah, the where I am, which is in Kentucky, we're in the horse racing capital, so there's still a lot of diversity, but it's mainly, if you just Google like biggest horse racing countries, then they probably own a small fraction of all of the horse farms around where I live. So the most diversity we see is around the types of horses. So. So not as much like food. So, interesting.
Well,
so, happy, 19th anniversary? Is that what it is for the Final Fantasy right now? Or we're not the 20th yet, right? We're 19.
No, I think the 20th is next year, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, so I knew it was anniversary time because, from the replies that I got from the post for this podcast, it was a lot of questions that people post if they're just kind of coming back to the game. So I had to check, and I'm like, oh yeah, here's our anniversary campaign-ish. So yeah, if you are, I feel like we have to at least go over this part in the beginning. So if you are coming back, there's a return to home campaign going on. So I think it starts May 14th from what I'm seeing here. And so you can get and then there's a discount as well for the game. So whether you're new, returning, you can come back to the game. I think they do like a free month, and then to buy the game is actually cheaper right now. So yeah, that is what brought me back to the game like 2 years ago. So I said, hey, it's free to log in. I'm going to give away all of my stuff and retire from the game. And then a month later, I got sucked back in. So
How very altruistic of you giving all your stuff away.
Yeah, I literally did. And you can look through like all the like Reddit post that I made at the time. It was all like, so just to like, the reason I had Gil when I logged in was, I did goldsmithing like before the shield even came out, and I got super lucky on like some Stakini rings when they were worth like 200 mil each when they first came out. I don't even know if you played then, but
Yeah, I did.
So I crafted those and I quit the game. So when I came back, I'm like, all right, I'm done for sure. So I made these posts of like all these games that I did on the server where people could like win stuff. And then I'm like, well, the community is actually not too bad, because if you just look externally, you would think it's super toxic. But
oh,
what were you saying?
yeah, that does sound familiar now that you mentioned that post. But yeah, the level of toxicity is something we've gone over before. Like I said, Azura to me is like Mos Eisley spaceport. It's just, you see like
Yeah.
all manner of scoundrels, but you
very
also
much
get
love
some
and
real
hate.
good people here. Yeah.
But yeah, so I ended up sticking around. So here we are. So I'm not gonna dive in like deep to any of these, but know that they do all kinds of crazy bonuses now, and all of the good ones are in effect. So if you're just coming back to the game, and you want to catch up to what's going on, it's a very good time to do so. My daughter just woke up. All right. So yeah, we'll jump back in here. Before we talk about Final Fantasy stuff, I feel like, and this is maybe more me than you, I don't know, to be honest with you, but why it's been 3 months in between videos this time, or podcasts this time. For me, just to be honest, I guess a couple things. One, I've just been challenging myself, honestly, to work on my house more. So I really have played less, partly because of that. Like, I built a shed outside, which sounds small, but like if you've never built anything before, okay, it was a pretty big feat for me. Okay, I built an 8x8 shed. Still finishing up the painting, but I've been working on that. And then obviously, like kids are just like getting older, and then one of them is just, at 9 months, they start really kind of developing somewhat of a little personality, so you get to see those things. So I've just been more occupied there. And then honestly, there just haven't been a lot of updates in game. So I've still been running the link shell and events, and but honestly relying on some of our officers to really step up in those areas. But but happy to be here today. But anyways, that's my reason for the delay in content. But happy to be here.
Yeah, I think I should explain a few things. I mean, I've tried to keep a relatively steady update on my channel, but even I've been slowing down a bit because over here, this is the time of year when there's a lot of festivals related to my work coming up, and there's been a lot of work to do. I mean, only yesterday, the reason I couldn't do the podcast yesterday was because I was working at one of the local vineyards. There was a marathon run going on, and the company wanted to set up a stand at the end of it. So I was manning the stand for about 5-6 hours. So that's why I couldn't make it.
When you say marathon, what do they do? Like here, there's in the summers, there's a beer marathon to where every mile you have to chug a beer.
No, this is just straight. This is like just straight a run around all of the vineyards in the
so
in
a more
the town.
Responsible one, got it.
Yeah, well, more responsible with like wine and beer sales at the end of it. So
okay.
Yeah, so that was me for about.
Prize.
Yeah, it was me for about 6 hours, just taking care of things there. That's why I wasn't here yesterday.
Yeah, but I mean, to be honest, like today, like I really think that just to get into what we're going to go over today, I think 6-7 months from now, there's going to be a lot that's changed in the game.
Yeah,
and that's really going to be, I think, a lot of the focus today is like less like state currently, like big updates and how's it going to impact like today the way you play the game, and more so theorizing what could be. So in the beginning, what we're going to talk about is kind of really, we're just going to start off with like tanking in general, like the state of tanking in the game, because there's been a pretty dramatic shift, or at least improvements for some jobs.
Yeah.
Based
and I have
on
a bone to pick.
Yep, and of course Rua's got the insight and the bones to pick. And then, but but beyond that, a lot of it's going to be like, outlook. So talking about what is this new job progression system that's coming, like, and they keep stating it in some of these posts that they're making. So we're going to talk a lot about like what could be with the game, and what it could potentially lead to, maybe in the 20th anniversary. So
before we get into the meat of that, I'd like to give a shout out to the fella who made that behind me.
Yes, I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah,
go ahead.
He did a really good job on this. This was made by Draco. He's posted on the Auction House forums every now and then. He's got his own page, which I've linked. And I mean, he just asked for my address, and I obliged, and he sent me this because he asked me what REMA do you find the most precious to you, and I'm like, it was the first one I got, the address. So he's done a real good job of it, and he's also the guy who trolled you, isn't he?
Yeah, he's also the guy who got me my, what I call a Kraken Club, what he calls a shell buster, which was like the greatest thing. And if you go back and you watch the other episode, you already know, but the greatest thing is, and if you're not watching the live stream, you won't see this, but if you go on YouTube and watch it later, you can see, but is he actually sent this with it. So instead of Kraken Club, it says shell buster. And what's funny is, like, that's my type of humor, and he was actually worried that I was going to be upset about it. But I don't know if this is still active, because I haven't talked to him actually in a few episodes. I'm going to reach out to him after this, since I've seen that Rua
he might be
had
worth
his
talking
now.
to, actually. Yeah, he might be worth talking to.
Well, yeah, so if you use, and I'm not going to say this is active now, but I think it is, but Nudawn in all caps, there's a benefit in actually ordering through his Etsy. So I'm not gonna. If you're listening to the podcast or you're watching later, you're actually going to be able to get this, because I'm actually going to open with it if I talk to him. But yeah, he actually reached out and was like, "Hey, what kind of can we make a partnership?" So I'm gonna see if that's still active. Because have you seen his Apocalypse that he made recently?
I did see that. Yes, that's probably his best one yet. I mean, they're all brilliant. It's just the Apocalypse, just the sheer size of it. I mean, I thought it would just be like a miniature version, but the thing looks like it's 6 foot tall. It's like,
yeah,
because he's got that picture of him holding it by his door. I'm like, that door frame's easily 6 foot.
Well, at least in America, it's got to be at least 8. I think that's like minimum. So
it's massive. I'm like, dude, how much is that going to cost to ship? I mean, and you kind of like assemble it yourself. Because if you were to send that whole thing, not only if that tried to get through customs, they'd be like, hang on, what's going on here?
Yep,
yeah.
Yeah, so yeah,
brilliant.
Thank you again for that. I mean, it's just little stuff like that, too, that, like, there's so many people in the community that even when there's a kind of a lull moment, that kind of just keeps you engaged a little bit. So, we really appreciate that, especially, with a man that's living literally in the future. He's 18 hours ahead of everybody else. To ship that all the way is really
it took
cool,
a while.
So.
Yeah, he was sending me. He sent me messages like, "Hey, I've not heard of it arriving yet." It's like, yeah, it's taken like 2 months for stuff to get here, because there's like New Zealand is pretty tight on biosecurity as it is, but dude, It takes ages for stuff to clear customs now. Yeah, at least it took like 2 months to get here. So I'm like, dude, it's just they're just being really, really anal about it.
Yeah.
When it gets there, I'll let you know.
Yeah. You got it though.
Got it.
Interest, so.
If the last thing I'll say, if he really wanted to challenge himself, and he does, like, I'm talking like, if he wants a serious challenge, the one weapon that he could make that would be a real test of his skill, EPO. Can you imagine how hard that would be to make?
Yeah, and I'm sure, like, yeah, because you think parts wise, I mean, really, what, 2? Yeah, I mean, because the blade itself is the whole thing.
It's massive. It's like a surfboard. It's huge, that thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like all the designs on it, all the runes that are on it. It's like, yeah, if you want to really test yourself. Yeah.
Well, speaking of EPO, I mean, I think that kind of is actually a good segue into our first topic, which is ironically enough, the state of tank, and a lot of this I'll hand off to you because you do more tanking than myself at the moment. But
yeah, I practically live on tank these days.
yeah, I mean,
Not entirely, but mostly.
One set of gear essentially has completely, I won't say completely evened out in all areas, but seemingly has kind of really brought Paladin, or at least caught Paladin up in being able to do majority of content that's out now.
Yeah, I'd actually say it's 2 sets, and one of them benefits Rune as well. The first one, of course, is the Sakpada. I mentioned that in one of my last videos. But between then and now, I've gotten some of the Naame pieces to relatively high rank. So I've got some even more powerful weapon skill damage pieces. And yeah, it's even more evident that Paladin can push some pretty good DPS. Nothing like on a true DPS scale, don't get me wrong. But dropping like 40k weapon skills and Vengeance 15 fights. That's previously that was unheard of for a Paladin.
Yeah. And not to so I'm not going to take away from the updated video that Rua did. So if you haven't already, I'll make sure that you've got a link to his channel. But there's really 2 big areas that are addressed, just to catch anyone new up, is Paladin was really lacking in the ability to effectively tank and also do damage, as well as kind of the magic mitigation front. So like magic evasion, and being able to, because a lot of content now is heavily geared towards magic, and that was a big lacking area that this one particular updated set of armor addressed. So
that's Sakpada and Naame. I'd say those 2 sets have really brought Paladin and Rune are now pretty close together. Each has got what they really do better, but the gulf has been closed significantly between them. Even Ninja has gotten a really good tanking build. I mean, previously you had Malignance, but the Paka set with its counter and massive evasion, and just really good stats on it. That's also solid. I'll get onto Ninja in a moment because there's something which is really bugging me about that. Rune Fencer gets a fair bit out of the Naame set from Bumba, even when you haven't got any RP in it, because you look at the stats on it, it's got really high evasion and really high magic evasion, accuracy, attack and whatnot. Lacks a multi-attack unless you augment it on that specific path and get a lot of RP in it. But previously...
Which set?
Naame.
Fencer, sorry?
Naame from Bumba. Previously, Rune Fencer had the term set, but really the only piece of the term set a Rune Fencer really used was the mittens and the feet. That's the only pieces they really used of the set. Well, you could use the whole set if you wanted like a full-on magic evasion build, but now you've got this, which is cheaper and better. I mean, the terms and the leggings are still pretty much irreplaceable for a physical tanking build. But
physical, yeah.
But if you put the Naame set on B path and you get some WSD on it, you've then got yourself a Dimidiation build, which doesn't have enough dex as 2 pieces of Lustratio and whatnot. But you don't lose your tanking stats when you're actually doing your weapon skill, which was a big benefit to Paladin, because previously Paladin's problem when it came to weapon skilling is that any set it could use would not only lower its HP too much, so it would cause your HP to yo-yo back and forth, but you would also lose all of your tanking stats. So if you took a hit in your weapon skill set, you could take a big hit. So it wasn't really worth it. But Sakpada and Naame have both completely alleviated that problem.
Yeah, it's like it's almost like a meme in a lot of content. It was like, oh, I got caught in this set.
I've seen it happen a lot.
Yeah, so now you can avoid a lot of that. I got caught in this set excuses if you got this new set.
It's like when a few weeks ago, I was doing V15 Arabati a bunch. That's the Snow Lion. And Yeah, he has an encumbrance move, which if he catches you in like a set which isn't your tanking set and you're stuck in it for about 10, 15 seconds, you could be screwed. But unfortunately, he caught me in Sac Para. So I'm like, come on, have a go.
Yeah.
Overall, though, this is down to personal preference because I've been playing both tanks recently for segments and for vengeance runs. I really just prefer Paladin, and the reason for that is, well, you can actually shield block while disengaged. Paladin caps an SIRD set, a spell interruption set, a lot easier than Rune without major losses. And yeah, Rampart is really good against physically strong mobs in segment farms like Scorpions. God, I've seen those kill so many people. It's not even funny. Like, whether it's just Death Scissors, just one-shotting a DD, because the tank is only there for initial aggro. A tank's only really holding hate if they drop, like, say, like a Rune Fencer drops a Lehman or something, or Foil a bunch of times in a row. Mostly a tank's just there for initial aggro so the bard can sleep safely. But, yeah, I just preferred Paladin infinitely because I can help cure out as well. I mean, I like them both.
And you know, we won't dig too much into all of the updates that have happened in the past 8 or 9 months. Well, almost a year, and time flies. Oh my God. I think they started Paladin updates a year ago, but they've just really adjusted the job to, it's very different if now than if you would have came back to the game 2 years ago whenever I came back. So, which just proves that, like, you know, in a matter of time, you never know how the game itself can kind of change. So there's like 2 mindsets that I get in when I see these changes. The first is for the existing player base. I'm like, okay, how is this going to impact the content that is currently out? Because it's been here for a while, minus the most recent Odyssey stuff. The second mindset that I get in is like, okay, if I just came back to the game, for me, Paladin would be like super exciting because I don't even know that Rune Fencer was like the way to go for like all content in the game most recently before all these updates. Like those are the 2 things that I kind of think about. So like, what do you think about like the existing content that's out? Do these changes like make much sense for the existing player base, and will it even change what people do with the content that's already out?
I think it will. The changes to Paladin especially were because there had been a lot of noise about how the game only had one viable tank, or it seemed the game only had one viable tank out of all the jobs. And I think they noticed that, and those complaints enacted on it. They ultimately made Paladin a lot easier for a newer player to approach. Because to this day, I mean, let's face it, the majority of the shouts you see looking for content, they're always looking for tanks. Because it's a role that not many people want to do. Healing is the same thing, but then people learned how to kind of have cure bots and whatnot. I don't endorse that at all, but let's be real.
I have a thought on that later. I'm making a note.
Yeah, there was I remember a thread on the Auction House forum about a month ago. They're saying, okay, what are a white mage's expectations in the endgame? This person saying, oh, this was an experience I had. My link shell's asking me to cure like 3 parties in Dynamis. I'm like, bro, are you serious? But it's like, okay, I just had to be real. It's like your expectations are to watch all of your DPS get flattened in one hit because they weren't in a proper DT set. They'll scream at you for everything. Yep. Everything is your fault, and you'll then realize, wait, so many people just bot white mage. Let's be real. Like 90% of the white mages you come across are botted. Let's just be real.
I mean, you can definitely tell, like, just on, like, I don't know. Anyways, I won't go too into it, but just know that just learn the job, learn how it works, and, you know, if someone asks a bunch of questions that are very questionable when they join a group, it's probably a red flag. So,
Yeah, I like what they were doing with these patches, and it kind of makes me wonder why they undid a few of the patches they gave White Mage, because yeah, I've already ranted about the whole Asuna back and forth thing. That would have made things a lot easier for a player who's not botting. But yeah, whatever.
I mean, I guess the Paladin being more accessible thing, definitely.
This brings me on to the gripe I was having about Ninja. I mean, I've said my piece on Ninja tanking quite a bit, and so has Logical on Next Games channel. But did you see the testing on the person who got the Yagyu Darkblade, that katana from the Bonanza?
No, that was my question. I didn't want to lead into it, but I was going to say, because no one in our link shell won. Okay, so I was saying, do you know anyone who won the katana? But no, I didn't read the forums for anyone else who did win it. So
okay,
inform us.
I not on the server, but someone was sending me messages on the auction house who did get it. It wasn't the person who was actually featured in the Ninja thread. It was someone else, and that was.
If you want to, real quick too, just explain the katana for anyone who might not be playing right now that is coming back.
The katana in question is called the Yagyu Darkblade. It was a rank 1 Bonanza reward in recent weeks, and it basically did for the job in one weapon what the job should have innately, which is AoE Utsuzemi. It reduces the number of shadows that you give to your party members, but it still gives them the shadows. The thing is, what the testing revealed, and this is the really big deal, is that when you're under Yonin's stance, which is Ninja's defensive tanking stance, you get higher enmity values from casting Utsuzemi under Yonin, and the Yagyu Darkblade makes your Utsuzemi AoE. And it turns out that indeed the enmity you generate, you get for every person you hit with a shadow. So Ninja's got the undisputed best enmity generator in the game. I mean, if you hit you hit yourself and 5 people in your party with Utsuzemi knee, then you go San, then you go knee again. That's just the sheer math on that is nutty. How much flipping hate that is. That would instantly make Ninja tanking a hell of a lot more viable if you can hold hate that easily and also defend your party against AoE physicals. But for some reason, it's behind a Bonanza. I'm hoping against hope that it becomes an actual obtainable something that you can actually obtain in future through like future endgame content. It just doesn't. It just bugs me how such a game-changing piece of gear, which the job should have as a built-in mechanic, is behind a Bonanza. I just don't like that. It doesn't make sense.
So I've got my thoughts there, but before I guess post my thoughts on that particular statement, my first question would be: did the testing show if the and you may have said this, but I'm listening to my kids, but did the testing show like when you cast the spells, if it's nerfed on the surrounding members, like the
shadows are, okay. As a baseline, a Ninja main gets 4 shadows from Utsuzemi Ni and 5 shadows from Utsuzemi Sun. Ninja gets 2 pieces of JSC, its Ambuscade Mantle and the Empyrean Feet, which add another shadow. So in Ninja's Utsuzemi Ni gives it 6 shadows and 7 on Sun. The Yagyu Darkblade, it doesn't factor in that increase. It instead puts it down 2. So the Yagyu Darkblade would give a Ninja's party members 2 shadows from Utsuzemi Ni and 3 from Utsuzemi Sun. But the thing is, 2 and 3 shadows is enough to soak most AoE physicals.
Yeah. I mean, because most of them just like, regardless of shadows, it just takes shadows. So if you have shadows in place, it's going to mitigate the damage taken.
And the key thing is that you do indeed multiply the enmity based on the number of people you hit. It's almost like if like a rune fencer could AoE foil.
I'd be interested to know, was the testing done once those shadows are absorbed, what it does to cumulative enmity?
Yeah, there was a test that was done on the Ninja forum. It was really, really thorough. Simon says he put forward a pretty decent testing method, how a scholar could claim. He had a scholar claim with Sleep 2 to get 200 cumulative enmity from initial action on a target. Let the volatile enmity decay, and then Scholar would do Libra, which is an enmity gauge ability. After the ninja had done one at Zemi-san on themselves, then they would repeat the test with the Agu Darkblade and see what the difference was, and indeed it with the evidence and the numbers didn't lie. So yeah, this is actually multiplying enmity. So yeah, that's how they confirmed it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best segue is to just tie this into, I think the biggest portion of this episode, which will be theorizing around this new job progression system. So, well, I mean, just because we're on the topic, we're going to start with Ninja. But before we start with Ninja, I will just update anyone who's not caught up with the game. Essentially, over the past couple updates, they've used the terminology that they're going to essentially halt the majority of updating any jobs in the game in favor of one very large update to all jobs is kind of how it started. And then each update since then, they've changed that terminology to... since we're not doing any job updates in favor of this job progression system, here's the changes coming this month. So it sounds like, and we could be wrong, but it sounds like the next kind of really updates to jobs is what we're going to see is one all at the same time. And I'll address kind of the most recent update that's coming, and there's a little side and integer to that. But and two, kind of like what that means for like what we get in current content. So starting with Ninja, what I think for this katana, I mean, this seems so like basic and outlandish, but there's no test servers for this game anymore.
Used to be.
There's no. Yeah, so there's no testing content. All it is your two developers, or maybe there's 14 people working on it. But they don't have anyone who's actually playing the game every day, testing out any of their updates. So what I think they've done is created this new Odyssey gear system and these Mog Bonanza weapons as a way to test implementation of content that's going to come amongst this new job progression system.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. There's a bunch of people, even in my link shells, who are saying, they think that this is basically a massive beta test of mechanics to come. But maybe like Ninja being able to do AoE ninjutsu is something that they would add on like a job ability timer or something, but the Agu Darkblade just makes it a permanent thing. But yeah, I've heard that. I think there is definitely some weight to that theory. But then again, I wish they would stop being just so vague about it, because the fact that there's so many powerful things behind a bonanza, because previously, everything that you could get from a bonanza, you could actually earn in your own time.
Right, yep.
So, I think there's like a few exceptions, kind of like the Judgment Day painting or something. I'm probably going to get corrected on that.
But like actual like content impacting armor and weapons and whatnot, yes.
Yeah. And some of them just seem really, really weird. Like the Exeter gun. Seems weird. It's like that one's like seems really underpowered, but like I wonder if that's like a mistake. Like stacked ammunition is not consumed. If there was a gun that could let you fire without consuming ammo at all, That would be pretty tight. I mean, you'd actually get some really good mileage out of the domain invasion bullets.
Yeah, I mean, that would make sense. But you've got to think, like, too, just to be on the flip side of what you're thinking is, like, if they're drastically thinking of, because you got to look back for Ninja, they never envisioned the job being a tanking job. They envisioned it as DPS, and the community is the one that turned it into a tanking. So if they're like, potentially accepting that direction of the job,
they better after all this time.
Like, yeah, I mean, like they've trickled in all these mechanics that support tanking, but then they've kind of abandoned that method in the past, since really, I mean, like I said, I've only been back for a couple years, but it seems like since the eye level content has come out, Ninja has progressively just lost its ability to really be effective in that area. But now, like, what if it's just a mind shift change and they're like drastically looking to change the direction in a lot of these jobs? And I don't know. I guess maybe I'm being optimistic. But.
Yeah, I mean, they would have to be really careful with patching Ninja. Like I've said a few times, they'd have to be real careful whenever patching that job, because I remember in the Abyssy days when Ninja and Monk were OP as hell. Like, you could not touch Ninja and Monk in that content because they were just so strong. They could take hits, they could deal massive damage. But yeah, I think the same thing about Puppet Master as well, and Beastmaster to a lesser extent, is that if they're not careful, they could really break those jobs.
Yeah, so let me give you give an example there of how, like, potentially, like, and this is like how one change could really drastically change the way you play a job. But like today, like we changed our event times on Saturdays to kind of split them up. So one of them is at like 3 Eastern. So there's always usually like a smaller group of people now because there's not as many playing during the day as the evening. And today, for the first half of our RP farm, we ran 2 blue mages, and then I tanked on Beastmaster. So like what I did was went and mass pulled everything, snarled, and then tanked on the slime. Okay, so
that worked.
I literally just initially pulled on slime, and then we had a bard to sleep. But like, it's just little stuff like that. Like, okay, if you accidentally gave Beastmaster an enmity mechanic besides snarl, like what could that do? Like. So, like, to your point, like, even the smallest thing, like, sometimes we don't think about how it could change, but, like, if I had, like, right now, Beastmaster doesn't have any enmity, like, native, like, things to, like, actually tank anything, obviously, except Snarl, which transfers the hate that you have. So, pulling things makes it easier, but, like, just, like, little times I think tonight, like, okay, if I had an enmity mechanic for, like, when I pulled, and like the blue mage did one spell, like I lose everything. But what if I could do one thing and actually hold hate on my little slime pet? Because I don't know if you have your max DT set on your beast or not, but that slime never dies, dude. Like,
yeah, especially if you make good use of digest. That slime is a tough nut to crack.
Yeah, you just sit there, tank, use digest because it's on a one charge cooldown. So you can just spam it and just never die. So anyways, that was a long-winded way of saying I agree with you. But the example was fresh in my mind because we just got done with Dynamis 30 minutes before recording this. So
one of the something else that a link shot friend of mine brought up, which I think is a bit of a long shot, but could happen, when they patch all the jobs, I wonder if they're going to adjust what some of the mythics do. Like,
I hope,
because mythic weapons, apart from the main draw for most mythics is the AM3 multi-attack, but fundamentally they do things to the jobs that really underline and power up their central role. But if such patches are going to come which are going to make those things more ingrained, like more easily accessible. I mean, personally, right. I think that a white mage should be able to. A white mage should have access to a lot more Divine Veil gear to actually make Gnar spells and erase AoE.
Yeah.
And such a game-changing mechanic should not be hidden behind a mythic weapon.
Yep.
I mean, people say, the Ag Rush is relatively easy to get. But I'm like, okay, what would I know? Maybe like the Ag Rush could do something else.
Well, another point to that, and I definitely want to let you keep talking, is like, with the way that the content has kind of creeped, like, it's almost a necessity to have some of those things now. So, like, if you're a white mage, like, you should have the ability to be able to do those things, which, because of the requirements of the content that's out now that didn't exist, when you played white mage, 8 years ago or whatever. So
I would say a good shout. One of the adjustments white mage or buffs white mage might be getting is the Reviviscence spell. Reviviscence is something. Reviviscence is a spell that Ferrous Coffin in the campaign battles has. It removes weakness. I mean, white mage. Can you imagine if white mage was able to remove weakness? It could have like a long release timer.
Definitely could be more aggressive.
Yeah, but then again, you have to rebuff people. So, God, imagine if you could like. Even something like Under the Hood, like Arise, revives the player with all the buffs they had. That'd be crazy.
Yeah, so, side note, but like if they can't figure out how to not lose buffs if you accidentally DC in the game and come back, then I don't know if they're going to make it to where a job has the ability to do it. But.
I mean, talking about dream things, the only thing I'd like to see Bard get from any kind of progression system is like the reward at the end of it, a new JA that stops their buffs from being wiped. That's so frustrating for a bard. Like, you have like your perfect soul voice songs up, and given how much stuff mass dispels now, I'm looking at you, are a buddy, fucking prick.
Yep.
That would be really nice thing for a bard to have. Like, no, you can't actually erase my songs. I can overwrite them, but you can't. What dispel them?
But you can, even if it's like a job ability. But so I guess I think the most important thing to do before we theorize on different jobs and what the jobs could do is like what we think the actual job progression system will be.
Oh yeah.
Like,
so your thoughts first.
So I'll bring only because Vob couldn't make it. I want to make sure we get a little piece of him. So I asked him tonight, and he thinks it's another. He thinks it's going to be another CP based system.
I hope not.
So like a job point system.
I can see why he'd say that and think that, but I sincerely hope not.
Yeah. So his specific comments were like he thinks it's going to be changes to the existing game that will not require you to have them, but provide bonuses to those who are on more like in-game focused servers who like, hey, make sure you have this many job point 2 points in the bank. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think about that, but
okay. Do you want to share your thoughts first, or would you like me to?
So I'll share my thought on his comment. So, and then you can reply to that. My thought on that comment was, if that's the system, then I think it will be them holding out on content for old zones. So I think they would go back to the original expansions and add CP zones to them and not rely on the Adulan zone. So they would use that system as a way to introduce people, like injecting people back into the old zones again. That's my thought.
I wouldn't be totally against that, but yeah, it would be nice to see some life get breathed back into old zones, but I'm honestly not a fan of the idea of CPing all over again. I'm not down for that. We already have a system of converting excess CP into getting your Dynamis augment thing sorted out in Juno. So, I mean, it's not really optimal, but that's one way of spending excess CP. And
what is it? I'm sorry?
You can
Oh,
you can spend
yeah.
Oboro. You can spend excess CP and actually unlock the ability to R15 through that, but it takes ages and it's
Right.
like ridiculously time gated.
Yep.
Honestly, overall, I really don't want that. I don't want it to be something that you can just gather points for, because you would just have people buying it.
Yeah, that was the other comment that was made by the next person, was like, okay, so another thing to murk on the server.
Yeah, it's like, and I would like to see a system that actually is a hard counter to that, because if this is about job progression, you already quote job mastered, but how many people are actually job mastered really? I mean, like, people actually understand their jobs from actually playing it and earning CP to actually master it and learn it along the way. I would like to see this job progression system be a set of ROE objectives that you, for each job, based on what that job's function is, you need to do like certain things on a certain job, and it like gives you stat boosts or something, and it gives you points or something. It would actually force someone to learn how to play their fucking job. Sorry for the bomb there, but it's kind of annoying when I guess I'm just a little bit jaded about seeing. I guess I'm just a little bit jaded about seeing people like job mastered people in Sparks gear. I'm like, come on, really? Seriously? Or like the best one I saw recently, relatively recently, there was a job mastered white mage who came along for an ambuscade run. Did not have bar spells.
What are bar spells? You say a white mage?
Yeah, white mage with no bar spells at the start of the Meeball ambuscade. I'm like, bro, are you serious? And honestly, immediately afterwards, I felt like a right dick, because I was in a stream with someone, and it was actually being streamed on a update day. It's just, God, it was frustrating as hell. I probably said some stuff I really regret, but I just got tired. I'm just tired of seeing that. Like, you need to actually earn something. You can't just like, oh, here's my credit card. Nah, you should be able to earn
Here's
it.
my credit card.
No, fucking earn it.
You definitely don't want it pay to win. Like, we definitely have our disagreements and what I feel about, like, having to necessarily sit there and grind 2,100 job points on every job, but to focus in on your idea for the new system, I think is definitely interesting, because I'm thinking, okay, so assuming no new content, hey, you don't unlock. I mean, so like, how do you balance that? Like, let's say you had to like kill all helms or tank all helms or something. I'm just trying to think of like what that would be that would still avoid being able to like, okay, tank all helms, but I just have to be in the party so I can still buy this. But but yeah, that's definitely interesting.
Yeah, say for like, just to use like one example, like a geomancer to get some points in this ROE system or whatever it is, something like an ROE system, you would have to keep your Luopan alive for a certain period of time, or your Luopan must take certain amount of damage from attacks, or a geomancer should be able to like do like X number of magic bursts for certain amount of damage, or whatever. Or a paladin's would be...
Yeah, so it forces you to... Sorry, go ahead.
Or a paladin's would be do certain number of weapon skills, use cover on a person who actually has enmity a certain number of times. Just learn your flipping job. I really don't want to see...
Yeah, that's interesting, because... Yeah, each one of those you explained, or at least on the Geomancer side, I'm kind of catching up with what you're saying now, is because that would force you to create gear sets for all of those mechanics.
I just saw Rashid's comment there. Really, you're mad about that, Rua? This is Thunderjet, by the way. I saw a ninja wearing full ambuscade armor with ninja bonanza weapon. Yeah, that's pretty bad, but I would be willing to entertain the possibility that specific case was somebody's alt, or mule character who they're like building up when they realize, oh, I've actually got it.
Yeah.
So I could let that one slide potentially.
Did we confirm or deny if that was POL transferable or not?
No, it's not POL transfer on the same account.
Yeah. So it's yeah. Interesting. So, okay. So let's ride this theory just a little bit, and let's look at it two ways. So, and the first way is going to be the more what I would say pessimistic outlook for the game. Is let's say the 20th anniversary is the job progression system and nothing else. Like, how would it change the game the way we play it now with the content that we have now? And is it even worth all of that trouble?
Well, for current content, no, not really, because we know that current content can be cleared with what we have. Okay. So, and reliably cleared. I mean, no, I can't say that one. No, I can't say that. People already get on my case for that. But
what do you mean? Just say it. Like we.
No. I said I wouldn't. Okay. I already said too much there. But we've still got MP plus 2 and 3 to come. That's going to come from some different content. I still think that will be in the 20th anniversary as well. Be MP armor. And the content for that, whatever that is. But, yeah. It does make you wonder, though, exactly what content would be coming if we needed to advance our jobs even further. I mean, the addition of all this Odyssey armor, that's basically... Majority of it is weapon skill sets. I mean, some TP sets, like some Sack Powder and Parker, but Niame being a pretty much universal weapon skill set that's also got mitigation in it. It's like maybe the content coming, you'd have to be in that, have that much defense permanently to avoid dying or something.
Yeah.
And maybe it is like a soft reset on our current difficulty level. They're like saying, okay, just enjoy this for now, but what's coming, you're going to have to really buckle up because it's going to be pretty tough to survive. Who knows?
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement. Like, and this is where I've always been the more optimistic person about like what the 20th anniversary will be, but I just cannot imagine them, adding all of this armor and these bonanza weapons and all of these things that are like, why is this coming out in a time where all of the current content can be completed with what already exists and there not be something major coming for the 20th anniversary? So
yeah, personally,
so go ahead. Sorry.
Personally, I think that the reward for the Voracious Resurgence scenario is going to be one of those. It's going to be one of those weapons. Because you look at all the bonanza weapons. I'm sorry,
I didn't catch it.
I think the reward for the Voracious Resurgence scenario is going to be one of those bonanza weapons. Because you look like each job has got one. And some jobs are on 2 of them. So like you've got a warrior grade axe, got a beastmaster axe. I'm pretty sure every job at this point has gotten one. And some of them pretty unique, but then the benefit to winning that bonanza would be, you can actually get a second one. Because off the top of my head, 5 of them are really outstandingly amazing. Others, testing to see what we're actually dealing with. But I could see that being the scenario reward for Voracious. Whether or not Voracious Resurgence, because I have actually gone through the story now.
Okay, there we go. How far? Are you all the way caught up?
Yeah, I'm all the way caught up.
Okay, well, I won't ruin anything. I'm only caught up through Winders, but yeah.
Yeah, we can say. I can just say that I know this is a little bit of a segue, but I've got one theory, and unfortunately, it's kind of crushed a bit by the fact that there's already a H&M with this thing's name in the game, Jormungand, because they keep mentioning the World Eater, which is not Galactus, by the way. That would be a clash of IP. Jormungand was the, I think I pronounced that right, maybe not totally right. It was
You're probably
the world's,
more accurate than me, because I would say Jormungand or whatever and pronounce the J.
Jormungand was the world serpent in Norse mythology, and during Ragnarok he would pretty much eat the world as the world serpent. And they keep mentioning the world eater egg. So yeah, maybe that is Jormungand. But the thing is, there's already the NM in Ullagren Range, which is Jormungand, the ice dragon. So I'm like, nah, bugger, maybe not. But if you're looking at it from a pure mythology perspective, that's what immediately leapt out to me.
Yeah, I think just to tie in that storyline, like, if the end of all of this was only to get one of those weapons, like, I would think, if anything, and this is where I'm thinking, is like there has to be a new area. Like, I feel like they're not going to release anything for a year. Like, they're literally, like, without saying it, they're saying it, like, nothing's coming for the next year. Odyssey is what you're going to get. There's no job updates coming. Empyrean is a thing, and what I think is they're testing all of these things, and they don't want to screw up the Empyrean armor with whatever the 20th anniversary is going to bring. So I think they're testing that versus what they're going to announce next year, which I don't know if they'll call it an expansion, but I feel like it has to be a new area of the game. And I don't know in the past if that's existed before. Maybe the mini expansions that they released, the mod ones. But
I think your closest comparison to that would be them adding Race and Jima at the end of Rhapsodies.
Yeah,
I think that's the closest thing you got to that. I mean, if I was to make a guess, we know from concept art for Adolin that Tartarus was meant to be its own area, like a big part of it.
What is it? Which area?
Tartarus. There's concept art.
Body piece?
No. Yeah, like the body piece, but that's just the namesake. Tartarus is I think it's a section of the Greek underworld, mythology wise. And Tartarus, there's concept art. I'll try and find it later and PM you it. But there's like this cavern, this massive. There's like concept art of some adventurers like looking into this massive cavern with like all these towers in it and whatnot. And that was actually going to be part of the Adolin expansion. So maybe they're just going to apply that. There's like some really weird versions of Balamor, like Balamor fused with like Proto Ultima or something.
Yeah,
it's like really weird.
I'm hoping for and this is kind of getting sidetracked, but I'll bring it back into some other points in a little bit. But since we're on the topic, I'm just really hoping for like a continuation of a storyline that never got finished. Like, which I'm not. You're the lore person, so I'm not even caught up on it enough. But I'm just thinking like I don't even know. Like, I like watching your 3 segment on like Galka and whatnot, and like all that whole stuff. I'm like, okay, well, what could be with all these other storylines that didn't exist? But
then we know that the update coming in a few days is taking us back to Bastok with this story to Raybrim. I mean, it's pretty obvious who Raybrim, that child Galka, is. I think it's given who he is. He's the reincarnation of Ralgrim, who was the Shadow Lord, which is exactly why those beastmen are after him.
Yeah,
I think that's a given. I think we are going to go to Artagun in part 4 as well. I think Artagun is because Artagun features in the concept art for Voracious. You see Alzabi.
Yep, Alzabi. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's going to feature. And God, you've actually not gotten onto the Sandoria section of Voracious, have you? Because there was some really interesting things that got dropped there. You said that you were just on Windurst.
I've started it. Actually, no, I did start Sandoria, and I did that segment. So yeah.
So do you mind if I talk about it for a few minutes, or?
No, let's do it. Yeah, just know that like if you like spoilers or whatnot, skip ahead 10 minutes
Wait,
or so. Be done with it.
does anybody in the chat not want me to talk about this, or?
Well, regardless of chat, there's going to be the podcast too. So if you haven't played it, but yeah, I definitely want to talk about it. So if you're interested in the newest storyline, whether you care about spoilers or you don't, here's what's about to happen. So yeah, go ahead and talk though. I think this would be super interesting.
Okay. At first, it seems that the Sandoria section is a little bit detached from everything else that's been going. I mean, the Winder section was a bit strange. It's like, yeah, I didn't quite get how that was connected to everything. There's definitely some very significant stuff that happens in Bastok if you know the lore behind it. But Sandoria is where things get really interesting, because you encounter Exenmeal again. Exenmeal, if you've ever done the Wings of the Goddess Sandoria, he leads the first he leads the young griffins, and then he joins the cardinal stags, I think, and then at the end of the storyline he goes north to Rizawa to fight against the Orcish Empire up there, because he has such a chip on his shoulder that about his father dying at the hands of the orcs, that he just goes on a massive vendetta against them. And he shows up 10 minutes, about 10 years later, he comes back to Sandoria, and he's like this hardened guerrilla fighter. And he shows up randomly in Sandoria again. And it turns out he's come back down to Sandoria because there's some orcs from Rizawa, and you actually see and fight them in this section. And these orcs look really different from the others. And he's like, yeah, I've been following these guys back down here because they're after the World Eater egg. I don't know what it is, but I know that this specific orc is bad news. So, and yeah, it's just interesting seeing these orcs who've come down from Rizawa. And yeah, it's like the first time I've actually seen something from another continent like that. So, yeah, and Treon brings it up as well. There's like Treon, when you're speaking with Treon after the whole shenanigans with the bull and trying to get him out of his shell a little bit, he's like, Exenmeal has been kind of corresponding with him, telling what's going on, because Treon is quite prone to just buggering off to other parts of the world. He does it in the Artagon expansion. He like, do you remember the first parts of the Artagon expansion? Like Treon shows up in Al-Zabi.
Dude, it's been way too long for me to remember that.
Yeah, so yeah, and he's actually not. Exenmeal's not the first person we've met who's actually gone to Rizawa and has come from Rizawa. The male Mithra, Leko Haboka, he mentions that he spent a long period of time in Rizawa, and he's actually wearing the furs that the Vikings up there wear. He mentions that in the Winder storyline. And who else do we meet from there? During the Seekers of Adolin, when you're talking to the Leafkin, Rosaltia, she mentions that the tree in Lefalia has a sister tree in Rizawa, and that is Yggdrasil. Which is another Nordic
never
reference.
Caught that.
Yeah, it's there. So it just seems that they're dropping a lot.
Well, yeah, I mean, and partly in the Winders one, and then leading from some of the dialogue in Bastok, there seems to be like there's a lot of dialogue around like forgetfulness, like people are like forgetting things. Like in the Winders one, like their memory was gone and they couldn't remember.
I didn't get that, because that wasn't happening in Bastok. That seemed really weird. That was happening in Winders.
That was the Winders one. So like, I now I have to go back and even read it. But like they would do certain things and they're like very forgetful, and it was almost like they were trying to like remember certain things. But I don't know for sure. But all right, so let's get back to it. So let's go under the assumption, just so I can bring it back to like job related. Let's go with the more optimistic outlook, and let's say we hit the 20th anniversary, and we complete the resurgence. the end of that leads us to a completely new area of the game. What direction do you think, before we get into the jobs, what direction do you think that they take the game in? Do you think it's like a item level increase, or do you think we revert back to like pre-item level like requirements for in game? How do you think they address the creep in that area?
I think it would be an item level increase because, correct me if I'm wrong, I've not really played 14 before, but I've got a rough outlining of it. But isn't the item level in 14 like really high?
Yeah, so I mean, essentially it goes up every 6 months or whatever. They add new content to the game.
Yeah, they would be able. Yeah, they would. I think.
Creeps up.
I think it would be something akin to that, honestly. And it's like, oh, but why would you turn 11 into like a scaled down version of 14? It's like, well, there's no other way to go but up. Because, I mean, if all you do is, and you could find that they might actually increase the base item level of some of the stuff we have. I mean, the Odyssey gear seems unusually flipping strong for something which is 119.
Yeah, and I think
it seems weird.
The Odyssey gear, in my mind, supports the eye level increase like theory the most, because like you can't make that like powerful of like niche sets and not have something else down the road to mitigate how powerful that set is, you know?
Yeah. It could be that say it seems weird that like 119 item level 119 Empyrean is the same item level as like Sakpara. That seems really odd. So I think that really armor like Sakpara and Naomi is probably item level 140 or something. They just haven't put it in.
Yeah, I think they've lost sight on what the item level actually means, and they're more leaning towards on how many frickin' stats are on the piece of gear that they create. Because I mean, when you got to hit tab, you know, to see how many stats or additional effects are on a piece of gear, it's probably not the same as a 119, you know, like you said, base, you know, ambuscade piece of gear or whatever, you know.
Yeah, I think that it would be an increase in item level because they would have experience from other devs on the Square Enix online games division of how to actually increase item level proportional to an increase in content. I think that would be a very good shout.
So how do you think you change the game to bring... Okay, so I'm going to try to word this the right way, and hopefully the question comes through. Do you think they need to change the jobs more to be more balanced between like melee and magic, or do you think they need to change the actual content and then the mechanics to actually defeat that content to support whether you use a magic or melee set?
They need to just address the jobs, really, because you can't have all content be equally viable. Okay, you can't have all content. You can use like everything for every bit of content, because that would kind of defeat the purpose of strategizing. Yeah. And you could just throw like... I think they've gotten that right about Odyssey T3s, honestly. They've got that bit right. It's like each of them has got something that they are really weak to, that you do need to actually work around those jobs that you don't normally do. It's been interesting seeing how many people have been struggling with Ongo, the bird, and Jevioso. Honestly, if I'm being real, the hardest tier 3 on Vengeance 15 I've fought has been the B, Jevioso. That thing fucking sucks so bad. I can't think of a worse time I've had tanking something than that. Well, quote, tanking, because I wasn't really, because it keeps resetting hate and going mental. But yeah, that was probably not the smartest thing to do, but I learned from that. I think they've actually done that really well. The issue is that some jobs are just operating off of massively outdated mechanics still after all this time. Black Mage being the worst offender of the bunch, by far.
Yeah, I mean, if you haven't,
Ninja,
by the way. Oh, go ahead, sorry.
Ninja previously was, but
go.
they've done some patches to Ninja and some gear has helped it out a bit, but still needs work. But yeah, Black Mage is the worst offender of the bunch. And that's where a lot of it comes down to, is that magic damage just isn't as viable on more content. Magic damage doesn't have to be viable on all content, just a lot more than it is right now.
Yeah, so here is my, so here's where my brain, where I'm not smart enough to, compute these things, I don't think, is let's say we increase item level, right? So naturally you would think that what you're going to fight will probably have more HP to be able to contend with, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you make damage on the magic side, let's say you make it better, how is that even going to change the way you fight things? Because you're still capped out at doing so much damage, and I feel like we're creeping up on you just being able to, if you have the right setup, you can just cap damage all of the time. So how does balancing the two even matter if you can just power your way through or super buff certain ways of doing things?
This might not sound like what people want to hear, but the weapon skill damage decay mechanic in Wave 3 Dynamis and some very few BCs, I think that needs to be a universal mechanic. You know, like how summoners hit a brick wall if they start spamming the same BPs over and over.
Well, yeah.
I think for weapon skills that has to be a universal mechanic. Like you can do the same weapon skill 2-3 times in a row, but if it's all you spam, its damage just plummets. That would actually force people to use other weapon skills.
Yeah, it definitely forces either the use of other weapons and weapon skills. Yeah. So it's almost like a less hardcore absolute virtue type strategy, or War of Courage of balancing what you have.
I literally think that's the only way you can patch it, because you can nerf weapon skill damage, you can nerf modifiers on eminent prominent weapon skills, but it's not going to stop people from spamming them.
So you think almost a limitation of damage versus a buffing of what can be done to scale against how they might raise the HP of content that you're going against.
Yeah. I mean, raising the HP is one way, but that's still not going to stop people from zerging. I mean,
right.
This doesn't come as a surprise to anyone. The most broken weapon in the game right now is the Niggling.
Listen, do not say that. You want to
really
put the community up in flames? Convince them to nerfing Niggling, and everybody.
Seriously, you cannot look me. You cannot look me in the eyes and say the Niggling is not OP.
Dude, listen. Is OP. When Dragoon's weapon, the best Dragoon weapon is a Niggling. If you buff a Dragoon now, if you buff a Dragoon, its best weapon is a freaking Niggling. Oh my god!
You could say the same for most jobs on it, with a few exceptions. It's Ranger's best weapon. Ranger's best weapon is a fucking sword. Are you serious?
All right, Dragoon though. I feel like Dragoon is a little less reasonable than Ranger. A two-handed weapon class ready to swing a giant fucking polearm, and let's give you a sword, brother, and give you some bards and a corsair and have you go ham. But
yeah, it's just,
dude.
And then people are like, oh, don't take the Niggling away from us. You can keep the Niggling, just add the weapon skill decay mechanic, so it's not all people spam. It's just, it's kind of so stupid. I mean, say a way around it would be if you had 3 different people doing 3 different weapon skills, it would slow down the decay rate significantly. I mean, if Black Mage is faced with a nuke wall, then I don't know. That nuke wall, the nuke wall was added for a reason. Maybe there needs to be something similar, and something Paladin or other tanks or other jobs could mitigate the impact of that damage wall or something. Just something, because
That's
it
interesting.
it's just, I mean, of course I'm not a game developer. I just say it how I see it going on. I mean,
Do you think?
I'm just tired of the same thing being used, honestly.
Well,
But at the same time, I can't begrudge people for doing it because I get why. I mean, even I've done it. I hate doing it, but even I've done it.
well, interesting enough. And this kind of ties in like exactly what you're saying. You're tired of seeing the same thing. So let's look at this month's. And let's try to think of bigger picture job progression system. Let's look at this month's Ranger update. I know you don't play Ranger much.
Yeah, this sounds fucking
you,
stupid.
Okay, well, it may sound stupid, but let me tell you where my brain is like maybe thinking. And this is where I'm always like, all right, is this a test? But so there's an update coming to Rangers, and if I play Rangers, so I feel it's a little more than if you don't play Ranger. But essentially, the problem right now is with Ranger, especially like bow, like white damage does not matter anymore. Like it's all about magic weapon skill. So like if you're in Dynamis, it's like True Flight's going to cap damage, or I have my R15 Gandiva and my Jishnu's Radiance does like 15,000 damage. Like why? But my white damage is fine on bow. So they're introducing a new mechanic this month. And let me just read you the paragraph. It says, the biggest adjustment this month comes for Rangers. Many of you have commented that Rangers feel a little bit weak as far as ranged attackers go. And after careful consideration, we reached the conclusion that our upcoming job progression systems alone would be insufficient to solve this issue. As such, we're adding a new ability, Hover Shot. While we'll leave the details to you to read in the version update, the basic gist is that Rangers will be gaining the ability to get increased damage when they move after making a ranged attack. So, my question is, do you think this could be something that they're considering job-wide in this new progression system as a mechanic to completely overhaul how everything kind of works in the game? Like, and I know what you're thinking, like about 14 base, where you're just constantly moving and dodging abilities, but that's where my mind is. Like, is this like a test for other jobs to see like if we introduce this thing that doesn't exist? Or I'll give you my second thing and then you talk as long as you want. My second thing is this is just a like future anti-bot mechanic of like, okay, how do we introduce a mechanic that keeps people from just automating or botting all of their accounts because they have to constantly be moving in order to take advantage of these buffs? So,
well,
what do you think?
I think it's stupid. I think it's really dumb. I think that people do.
It's still stupid. All right.
I mean, on a fundamental level, I mean, I don't play Ranger, but I've played it in the past, and I've got a rough idea of how it works. It's the sheer. I'm not sure if they even played Ranger before making this adjustment, because if you move, you interrupt a shot, and if you're constantly moving, you have to stay still for a little bit and then fire. But if you're constantly moving, you're not shooting. In which case, your TP gain is slower. In which case, you don't weapon skill as much. In which case, your DPS is lower. Even if you were to get enhanced damage. It would have to be a massive damage dealt bonus. I'm talking huge. But then again, you run into the issue if you're using Gandiva Armageddon. If you're doing even more white damage, you're dead. It's what are you doing? It's
that's the biggest problem now is like white damage is like, an Omen, I could pop my Gandiva and get my AM3 up, and then I'm shooting for, flipping 20,000 a range tack, and then you're dead because you pull so much hate. So that's where I'm like, I hope the pessimistic side is like you're misunderstanding where Rangers lack, because it's not in the white damage category, because then I would just make
it's physical weapon skill. Yeah, it's physical weapon skill damage. That's the problem,
weapon
Ranger.
Skill damage and how strong Gastrophides magic weapon skill damage is. And like so here's my optimistic outlook is it's a duration movement ability. Okay,
I
so
hope it is.
it's not like you have to shoot and then move after every frickin' shot. Like that would be like
stupid.
Stupid. Now that we can agree that would be stupid. So I want to know exactly what that buff will be. And since it's not weapon specific, I'm just struggling to be optimistic about it. Because Bo is so under just trash at the moment, to be honest with you, that, but anyways, the mechanic in general, I think is interesting because it introduces an element of like, anti Zerg, you know what I mean? So like think like summoner meta, like, oh, I'm just gonna pop my my AFAC and go, but instead challenges me to do different things during the fight in order to achieve these extra bonuses while I'm mid-fight, if that makes sense. That's my optimistic outlook for it.
To me, the patch to Ranger is pretty simple, honestly. That doesn't seem that they've really acknowledged it. The fact that unlimited shot is on the same reuse timer as double shot, that's earth-shatteringly dumb.
Well, that and the modifiers for physical weapon, like Jishu's Radiance, the modifier is stupid. Like, if you've looked at Jishu's Radiance, the modifier for the weapon skill itself is dumb.
I still think that they mixed up the modifiers for Jishu's Radiance and Blade He on Ninja. Blade He is an agility mod, whereas Jishu's Radiance is a dex mod. I'm like, shouldn't those two be the other way around? Yeah, I think they messed it up.
Well, it's almost like you're building a the sword weapon skill build too, like that's dex modified, like. But it's like why, like it's just an awkward build because we don't have gear that supports the modifier itself plus all of the other enhancements for ranged attack and weapon skill. So Jishnu's Radiance comes out doing like 15,000 when I have an R15. Like it's so frustrating because like Bo is so cool to me. It's like much more like Ranger-esque, but
the advantage of Bo is that you can actually exploit true shot better and not get yourself killed by being in the line of fire. Because isn't like Bo's best distance is 20 yards?
Somewhere in between there. I don't think it's quite 20. It's definitely inside 20, but
I don't like the fact that Ranger has to be so. I mean, I get why Ranger has to be mindful of that distance, but there's no way of telling in game whether or not you are at the right distance unless you use a certain something.
Yeah, I mean, like, we won't go too far down that rabbit hole, but like, when you introduce things that make it impossible to natively know vanilla whether you're taking full advantage of the intended mechanic is silly. Like, anyways. I mean, yes.
In the time that a Ranger would in vanilla would be like, okay, I'm not at the right distance, need to move back, shoot again. Oh, I'm not quite there. Okay, move again. Right, move again. And by that time, other DPS have dropped like 5 weapon skills into the target. So pointless.
What's also ironic is like during the old patch updates, they would literally call out like the ideal range, like if you were within like certain yalms. But how would you know in vanilla? Yalms?
You don't know in vanilla. That's the thing. You don't.
But yet they can like state these things in the version updates. But I mean, this is way back whenever they completely overhauled Ranger. But like, I specifically remember that. Like, so how would an average person on the PlayStation 2 know how many freaking yalms you are away from a mob? Like,
yeah,
I don't know. So, okay, so let's go with a year from now. We know we've got.
Did you see? Sorry, there is actually one more update that's coming over the weekend.
Let me pull this up real quick. That's a good one. So let's hit on
Paladin.
Oh, okay. So yeah. So this month, let's see if we can tie this into. I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Yeah, you did mention this. I'm sorry. So let me finish out this paragraph. There are some adjustments essentially to Paladin. Is it spells or a bit just spells?
Spells, right? Yeah, and the key there is the pluralism there, spells, so more than
There's
one.
more than one. Okay,
Yeah.
so what do you think's coming for Paladin down the road?
I think the most sensible shout is reprisal not wearing off after it's absorbed a certain number of hits, or it's blocked back a certain number of hits, because that's actually the flip side to using the Pruwen. The Pruwen's amazing for increasing reprisal's block rate even further, but the downside of the Pruwen is it also increases spike damage, so it wears off quicker. I think that being done away with, and it's just a spell that lasts a certain period of time and then just goes away. Then you just recast it. I think that's a pretty good shout. The other one,
So
I could
just to clarify for anyone who's listening in but doesn't play Paladin. So reprisal, it's a buff that you put on, but it actually has a cap for the amount of spike damage that can be taken. Is that how it is?
Yeah, reprisal takes your maximum HP. I think it's double your maximum HP at time of casting, and it puts up a block rate increase effect on yourself. And whenever you block an attack, it rebounds a certain portion of the damage back onto the target.
Okay.
But unfortunately,
can you gain enmity from that?
No, you don't. That's
okay.
That's what I think the second adjustment to reprisal is. I think they're gonna increase the base enmity value of reprisal to make it mirror foil. Yeah, I think
so
that's not
the damage that you actually.
No, but just base enmity from casting it, because as it stands, foil's got like 900 volatile enmity. That's nothing on. Reprisal's got 900 volatile enmity. That's nothing on foil. I think they're going to make it the same enmity as foil. So Paladin's got something.
Which is, if I had to use, what is it, 880 volatile?
Yeah.
Foil is like 800 or 8.
But
foil
the
is
key,
880.
But you look at the cumulative on foil. Yeah, the cumulative on foil.
320.
Reprisal's got. Yeah, that's the thing. So I can see that happening. I think that's another good shout for reprisal.
Yeah, that's interesting. So as long as that's up, you never lose essentially that 300 enmity.
Yeah, that's crucial.
Yeah, that's interesting.
The second spell, I think, logically, is going to get adjusted is Enlight and Enlight 2. I think those two are going to get a patch to not decay the accuracy bonus whenever you swing and hit a target.
Okay.
But if they did that,
they'll... I'm sorry, go ahead.
But if they did that, they'd have to change Endark and Endark 2 as well to not decay attack. But yeah, I think that's sensibly. I think those are the two patches to those Enlight 2 and Reprisal. I think it's going to be those. I think it'll be those. The dream scenario, which would be earth-shatteringly epic, is if they made Flash become AoE under Majesty. That would be earth-shatteringly amazing. But
everybody
that's why
wants
I don't
that
think
AoE Flash.
It's just even make it so if not under Reprisal, if not under Majesty, make it under Divine Emblem. Make it AoE.
Yeah, I guess like my thing with the AoE Flash is like, and then I'm sure you're way more intelligent to correct me on this, but like I almost feel like it would introduce a degree of laziness that the like Blue Mage sub job like remedies. Like at least the Blue Mage sub job allows you to like forces you to engage in certain spells and know the distances for how far like Blue Mage spells go and whatnot, but
yeah, that's also a handicap. I mean, I've encountered that problem in a few segment farms where I'll have like a whole bunch of stuff crowd around me. I think I've got all of it. And I will tell the bard, oh yeah, I've got it. And then there's like one on the outside that's just out of range. I'm like, oh, and then I see it going running off. I'm like, oh fuck. Okay, off I go to just go and grab that. Yeah, so I just don't like the fact that both tank jobs in any content with lots of mobs, they're tied to sub blue pretty much. mean, you can use Sub-Dark, do Poisonga, but you need like the initial aggro because it's common. It's just common instinct for a white mage to just cure you as soon as they see your HP drop a bit. And if all you've done is Banishka, Poisonga, you don't have initial enmity or much.
Yeah,
so
I think,
cure just rips hate and they just die.
Yeah, I think it's almost like a it's just a negative side effect of the game itself, because the game is built around a main job and a sub job, right? So like the frustrations that come about on reliance for some of those things can be frustrating, but at the same time I think, okay, it's really cool that I actually have to go out and level and learn this other job in order to accommodate this main job. So like I hear what you're saying, but at the same time I think it's just a result of the way this game is built. So I don't know if I would even change that in some ways, but I don't know.
I would just like an alternative to Sub Blue. Honestly, something that's actually viable. Because Rune Fencer has got Shockwave, which actually puts stuff to sleep. So you've got something there. Paladin's got Banishka, but that's nowhere near good enough. Yeah, AoE Flash would really solve that problem.
You don't think part of this new job progression system could be a step away from sub-job reliance, do you?
Well, no, not really. I think it would just be to remedy and improve quality of life aspects that a job should have, really. Because you can't just do away with the sub-job system. I really don't like that about Odyssey. That's the one thing I don't like about Vengeance fights, is that you don't have your sub jobs, so bards can't help heal. White mage actually can struggle, especially if they don't adjust their curing set, because you can't counteract the double darkness weather.
So here's where my mind is once again, but also I'm not doing Odyssey. So I'm not doing it because I think the content is going to be irrelevant in a year from now, and where I am, I'm not doing it. But you don't think that mechanic could be a test for something major change in the game?
Maybe there will. Okay. I'll entertain that thought. Maybe they are just experimenting to see how a job functions without its sub job. But that seems like making things unnecessarily difficult, because so many strategies are based on being able to customize at least a part of a job with a sub job. Just taking that away after having your sub jobs for like 18 years now.
Right, but like taking a whole year to release no content. Like, we know this year we're not going to get any new content. Like, we just need to accept that we're not getting anything in 2020. It's going to be nothing but Odyssey, and you doing Odyssey with no sub job. And listening to you, because we know they look at the 11 auction house forums. We know that they look at all of the feedback, obviously, on at least they get majority of the feedback on the JP side of the Square Enix forums, but I don't know. But yeah,
I'm not totally in love with that idea. I
don't know. I just think this is where my brain is thinking, but yeah. What do you think is if we get a new expansion or we get a new zone? Do you think that I'm trying to think how to word this, like any new elements of the game would best support a new introduction of a job, if that makes sense? Like what mechanic would be introduced for us to go against to where introducing a new job that doesn't exist might be relevant, if that makes sense? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I get what you're getting at.
Like, what doesn't exist in the game now that has existed in the Final Fantasy like lore in general that might support new content in the game, similar to like what Geomancer and all this Rune Fencer and all that introduced?
a completely new mechanic. Honestly, I'm really not too sure. They've covered a lot with. It would have to be a really innovative thing. I'm really struggling to think of what they could actually.
Well, I think like just as an example, I think just to kind of paint what I'm saying, because I'm probably not asking it the right way, to be honest, is I feel like Rune Fencer is the perfect image for like where Ryzen Jima is, because like let's say prior to these Paladin updates, because it's very like ailment like heavy, magic heavy. So you have this job where they've completely like Rune Fencer when it came out and to now is very different, like, and how they've designed the job. So like that type of area. So if like Rise and Jima now, you would see like, oh my God, Rune Fencer. And if you looked at its kit and its job abilities and job traits, this would be great for this content. And it may not, there may be no answer too. It could just be like what we've been talking about is like, an actual change to the jobs themselves and how you actually fight things, unless, a shift in the in-game content itself. So
I know it's become something of a meme on the Auction House forum, but I can't help but feel that them adding Monbro is them beta testing mechanics for a future job as chemist. I know that's literally a meme on the Auction House forum, so indulging in a little bit of lols there. But
but why would you add it if not?
Well, it would give you another healer. Because
I'm saying like, why would you? Yeah, I mean, I guess, but like, I feel like that's a lot. Like that's a lot of work to put into that trust. To just be like, okay, here's your trust. All right, the trust is done.
But yeah, I mean, we know that sphere effects, them beta testing the sphere effects from Void Watch, whether it was auras that began in Abyssia, or the sphere armor that got added in Void Watch, was literally them just beta testing Geomancer, which became that thing over there. But Mombro is basically he does heals, does protect and that lot of stat buffs, but we only see just the effects go on. I mean, they could take. I think that Ashen Bubs posted on Twitter he said it was initially going to be an April Fool's thing, but he actually ended up taking it in a more serious way. I'll try and track down his tweets later on and PM you those as well. But he theory crafted how a chemist would actually be built from the ground up.
Yeah,
but I'm really not sure, and I just struggle to see how they would make it its own thing.
Well, let me read some of the abilities that might be a little less known.
You've got
so it has access to what's called Dark Potion. Sorry, that one's damage based. Sorry, like Insomniant, so negates sleep completely. Samson Strength, all stats plus 10, which is AoE. Dragon Shield, so that's just another magic defense boost. It has a magic attack bonus item that it uses. It has a regen bonus. It has Protect, which is equivalent to Protect and Shell, so Guard Drink, which is equivalent to 220 defense and 29% magic damage taken. I don't know how that equates to Protect and Shell, like what scale of 1 through 5 or 6, but so it has quite a few mechanics that are interesting.
Maybe when my schedule frees up a bit, I'll have fun theory crafting that. But
that would be probably a pretty cool video from you. A theory craft video. You've been doing all these, like, if they change this job, what would happen? Like, how about if Monbro was a real, or what if Chemist was a real class?
Well, and not to mention the aesthetic and look of the job would tie in well with Rosawa up north, because natural medicines and whatnot. I mean,
and it has cover ability.
That's a bit of a weird one. I think that's just Mombro being a bit macho. But yeah. Thing is, I know we're going off a little bit of tangent here, but Vikings and Norse mythology shows and media based on Norse mythology are all the rage right now. I honestly think Skyrim's to thank for that. I think Skyrim was the first one which really got people interested in that. If I'm being real.
Yeah.
Skyrim
I know and like the Vikings TV show, like a lot of people. I don't know if you've watched it, but like in America,
Vikings is amazing. Yeah, it's a really good show.
Vikings, and then also the
The Last Kingdom.
The Last Kingdom on Netflix. It was like the most popular Netflix series during COVID last summer. So like everyone is all like, Viking ho right now. So
yeah, just one last segue there, but Vikings is how you actually wrap up a series well. Not do a Game of Thrones at all. Yeah, I'm still.
Oh yeah, don't tell me the ending because I haven't seen the last season. But yeah.
Yeah, it's a good it's how you actually do it right. But I mean, you could literally just use the aesthetic from Norway and Scandinavia if you wanted something like that, because we know it's an icy continent, hence the furs and all that lot.
That's true. Yeah.
But yeah, maybe I will do a Theorycraft video at some point, but there's a bit of a schedule. I think that people would rather I did Beastmaster Guide first, despite the fact it might get changed over quite radically by any adjustments. I think that's long. People have been waiting on that for ages.
Yeah, and I think a good, wrap up to, our job progression conversation, and as we wrap up here is, you're hoping for an ROE based system versus anything else. So like you need to go actually do this specific thing and before you get access to it. And it's not something to where you can just, kill something or like, like an experience bonus type.
Yeah. Because if you just basically make it job points Mark II, you're just going to get people buying it. Whereas if it's actually you have to do certain things in certain difficult content which you can't be a passenger, actually force you to master your job truly. I just don't want job points Mark II. If it's job points Mark II, I'll be really, really disappointed.
Yeah, I've pretty much like personally thinking to myself, like, if we wait another year and there's no new areas and no new content and they just say, here's a whole new set of job points, I'm like, that's probably going to be my turn off switch. But if it actually leads to where hopefully I hope that's going, then hopefully it will be something, worth the wait. At minimum, if you are just, coming back into the game, a lot of this stuff probably didn't make sense, but there's really a lot to do in the game if you're just coming back. So don't be jaded by some of these things. But so I guess the last topic then, and then if there's anything else that you can have, obviously we can talk about. But just as something fun, and we kind of hit on it with the chemist class. But I've been kind of thinking, what is something that exist in the other Final Fantasy games that could be brought into this, and in terms of like spells and abilities, and so I think of like outlandish stuff like stop and all that stuff. So that's kind of where my brain is. Like, is there anything in some of the other games that you thought could be possible to bring into to 11?
This one I should have already mentioned. In hindsight, I should have mentioned this in my Black Mage video I put out the other day. Maybe at the end of the job progression, Black Mage gets a spell which is really a series staple, which it's not gotten yet. Ultima. Yeah, make Ultima like...
Okay.
Can you imagine like Ultima being a spell that could actually break the damage cap? Say like...
Well,
Yeah,
go ahead.
Like Ultima.
No, I'm just thinking...
I think I think somebody made a comment, interesting comment on that video was about, what about a multi-hit magic spell? But like,
interesting. Does that exist in Final Fantasy?
I don't know, but the only one I can think of that's a multi-hit magic spell is Ultima in Final Fantasy IX, when Kuja uses it and just wrecks your party with it. But it takes like all of his MP. That is actually
really interesting. And if anyone's listening, come into the Discord and post. But yeah, a multi-hit magic spell. Because you could almost tie in that magical critical hit like stat into that, like somehow, you know?
I would make
death.
You
can crit on weapon skills and whatnot.
Yeah. I don't think death should take over Black Mage's MP, but Ultima definitely would. Like, just a massive mega nuke. That's like your last ditch effort. That's all something.
Well, that, or you could essentially evolve what you were saying about whatchamacallit to Ultima, where you need multiple mages to achieve it, and then scale it up, maybe?
I wouldn't do that.
You just want a single hard-hitting mother. I got it.
Yeah, when you really need to drop a massive nuke on something. There you go. But yeah, that's as far as spells go. Job-wise, the only job they haven't really implemented, I mean, Machinist in 14 is pretty much Corsair in 11, pretty much, from what I've gathered.
Yeah.
Uses the gun, it's a ranged DPS and there's kind of a small support. Chemist, I'm really surprised Chemist hasn't shown up in Final Fantasy 14, honestly. I thought it would have shown up there already. But that's one of the series jobs.
Well, they have a problem with inventory on that game. Just like 11, if that sounds familiar. So,
yeah, just a bit.
So I feel like in 14 that you would actually have to have all of those items for all of your abilities in your inventory. So they're probably like, yeah, we probably can't figure that one out. But interesting. I'm really stuck, and maybe this will be that multi-hit. Someone just said Comet was multi-hit, but
in Final Fantasy 7 it was. That's right. Comet was a multi-hitter.
So
that's right.
That's interesting. Huh.
But yeah, not sure how you work that into the existing framework. Maybe how would you do that? Like a spell, like say you would cast Comet or something, or cast Ultima, and it'd be like you would see like the first hit, then you see the subsequent hits land right after or something. I don't know how you make that work.
Well, I mean, you don't see that now in physical weapon skills for multi-hit. You just
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how you make that work.
Well, I think what they would do is integrate existing mechanics to address the damage done. I mean, similar to multi-hit weapon skills. Like, there's stats for all of those. I mean, I think there's things that exist in the game that could support how much damage that would do. Yeah. That's interesting. That's
but as far as jobs go, the only job they could really implement, I could see with existing mechanics and explore with a little bit of experimentation, is indeed Chemist, as much of a meme as it is. That's the only one I can see, because Viking or Berserker doesn't make sense because that's already Warrior. In a way, I'm not sure how they make that work. I just think back to Final Fantasy V. Final Fantasy V's the closest thing I think we've got to what we've got right now in terms of jobs, being an analogy. Maybe it's worth just looking at Final Fantasy V and seeing what jobs are in 5 but not in 11. I think that's your best shot, really.
Oh, well, I can tell you right now, I've actually got it bookmarked, but we got Knights, Monks, Thieves, Black Mage, White Mage, Blue Mage, Red Mage, Time Mage.
That's another meme.
Summoner, Berserker, Mystic Knight, and Mime.
That's Rune Fencer.
Beastmaster, Geomancer, Ninja, Ranger, Bard.
Yeah, it's very similar to what we've got right now.
Dragoon, Dancer, Samurai, Chemist.
Yeah, so Chemist is the one which steps out for me.
Chemist and Time Mage Chemist, Time Mage, and Mime are the only two that don't exist?
I can't see how those would... The only one of that one will work with Chemist. They'd have to do something completely original, I think.
Interesting.
Sage in Final Fantasy 14's a new one. That's not shown up in any other series before, apart from lore-wise in Final Fantasy 4, like the sages on the moon and whatnot. But yeah, which is blatantly what this next expansion is based off. It's based off of Final Fantasy 4. That's pretty
For 14?
clear. Yeah, Endwalker being on being on the moon. That's definitely Lunarians and whatnot. Yeah.
Well, it says advanced mobile and Steam exclusive. I don't know what that is, but it says Necromancer, Cannoneer, Gladiator, and Oracle. I don't know what that
Oracle?
is. Yeah.
Oracle might work.
Oracle is a Game Boy Advance mobile and Steam versions only of Final Fantasy V, found in the secret Sea Chasm. It's the strongest mage jobs in the remakes and boasting the highest magic power, but requires secondary command to reliably damage enemies. I don't know what that means, but interesting.
Gladiator just sounds like warrior, really, but whatever. Yeah, I still think Oracle and Chemist. Yeah, we're kind of like digressing more than just a little bit here.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, I think that's a good little fun area of a stopping point is, what could be in the future. So, I think we'll kind of wrap up there, but, just keep in mind something's coming for a progression system. We've talked about some stuff, but we could be completely wrong. But the good news is the game is now 19 years old, and we still have conversations about what's coming next, which is a positive point, I suppose. So, if you come back to the game, one of a few things. First, find Rua's channel. He does like the best job guides ever and super in-depth, especially if you're coming back to the game. Find our Discord, which you can search Nudawn ls.com and get a free invite, and then what else? Yeah, go ahead.
Stephen Hargrove just brought up a real good point there. I think Mime is pup. It is, in a way. Mime is actually Puppet Master because the automaton mimics different jobs. I think that's actually a really good point he raised there. Yeah.
Interesting. So we have someone from chat just solve a mystery that we brought up. That's a good point.
Well spotted. I'd even think I would have caught that.
Interesting.
Nice one.
All right. Well, Square Enix developers that are watching, you just reach out and let me know if that's accurate or not. So last thing is, remember, I feel like we just need to get, even though we haven't talked, just give the dude a shout out. Go find his Etsy account. If you love Final Fantasy 11, even if you don't subscribe right now and you just listen and you want some cool things to sit around, he makes all of the in-game weapons, or most of them, or all of the fun ones. So this is your good, what I would call a Kraken Club, some would call a Shellbuster, and Rua's got an Idris or an Idris or however the heck you say it. So
Idris, if you're saying it with a full-on proper pronunciation. Idris.
Yeah. Idris.
The Prophet Idris. He's one of the prophets of Islam.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly where it came from.
I think he has a video on that too. So.
I do.
Another reason to check out Rua's YouTube channel. So, other than that, we're going to end the episode here. Appreciate everyone listening. Hopefully, there won't be 3 months in between the next one. And we appreciate all of the support.